Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. How are you all? Hello, Adriana. Hello, good to see you all. How's your Friday going? Good to see lots of people arriving. Is it sunny where you are? It's sunny here, but it's rather chilly. Definitely not beach weather where I live. Good to see you all. So today's class is a class that I give every Friday. We are going to be talking about the difference between British and Brazilian beaches today. Something that's really interesting because it's quite cultural, the differences, not obviously just the landscape we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about what do people do at the beach, what is the tradition, what do people eat at the beach, etc. And I think it's something that I noticed this big difference once I moved to Brazil. I will be honest with you, when Antonio said to me, Antonio is my husband, let's move to Brazil for a while, I imagined living near the beautiful sandy beaches that there are in Brazil. Unfortunately, I live in the mountains, but I went to the beach last weekend and it reminded me of these differences between the beaches in the UK and the beaches in Brazil. And it's actually quite interesting also what you guys have as a perception of what British beaches are like. Because a lot of people imagine British beaches to be only one type of beach. Maybe a beach that has pebbles and rocks and stones on it. Maybe you don't think that there are any nice sandy beaches as well in my country. And so I'm going to be talking to you about the best beaches in the UK as well, so you can see this difference. So first of all, I want to talk about why the beach became a destination for people to go on holiday. Because I went away for the weekend, last weekend, on holiday to the beach. And it's interesting to think why people go to the beach, because it's not something that people have done forever. It's something that in history started as a medical reason in the UK. So in the 1700s, a lot of people didn't go to the beach, principally because they didn't have holiday, if they weren't in the aristocracy or wealthy, but also because a lot of people were scared of the beach. You might know from historical sources that many people had a big fear of the ocean, fear of the sea, because of storms, shipwrecks, because of not understanding where the sea went, etc. So lots of people had a fear of the ocean, of the sea. And it wasn't until in the middle of the 1700s that people started to go to the seaside. We say the coastline. We say in England it is called the seaside. The sea, and it's side, the next to the sea, basically, the seaside. So people started to go to the seaside in the UK because of medical reasons. Doctors started to say that if you went to the seaside, you could improve your health. And it became a health destination in the UK. People with money, the aristocracy and the wealthy, decided to go to the beach, go to the seaside to improve their health. And can you believe doctors at this time encouraged people not just to swim in the sea, but also to drink the water? Can you imagine drinking seawater? That was the recommendation from the doctors. I'm not sure that any doctors nowadays would recommend that you drink water from the sea. But at that time, doctors had discovered that there were some benefits from going to the seaside. And so they recommended that the aristocracy and wealthy visited the seaside, went to the beach. And this was when these small little towns that were by the seaside started to become popular, but with that specific part of society, the people who had the ability to go away, to have holiday, to visit the seaside. What is interesting, this was coming up to the Victorian period in the UK, is this concept of visiting another place and staying there, having a holiday. It was a new concept. We all go on holiday nowadays and think it's a normal concept to go on holiday, to have time off work and go somewhere. But this was not a normal concept in the past, to have time off work and go on holiday. And when doctors recommended to the aristocracy and the wealthy to go to the seaside and to start swimming in the sea, in the ocean, to help their health, this started to encourage people to visit the seaside and stay there. And this meant that those seaside places started to build a hotel, or to build a theatre, or to have different forms of infrastructure to be able to attend those people, to help those people who were visiting the town. And where were these towns? These towns were on the coast of the UK. Let me show you here. We have here a very famous, here we have a map. We have basically the UK, we know, is an island. And so you can imagine all of these places, these had little tiny villages and towns all around the island by the coast. But these were not big cities, because most people lived in the biggest cities, the industrial cities like Manchester and Birmingham and London, etc. And so these small places around the coast started to receive visitors, started to have people visiting them. And one of the most famous ones was Brighton. Brighton is a very famous seaside area town in the UK. If you guys have ever been to London, you might have seen that there are many trains that go to Brighton. Brighton is on the south coast of the UK, and it became one of the most popular destinations, as did Scarborough, Blackpool, Weymouth, etc. These towns started to receive these wealthy people who were visiting in order to improve their health. So they started to have this transition between being scared of going into the ocean, of not knowing what was in the ocean, to doctors recommending people to swim in the ocean. And we have to remember at this time, it was not common for people to put on a bikini and go in the ocean like we do nowadays. What people used to do, the Victorians created these bathing kind of where people would go in and change their clothes. So they would push these little huts into the ocean, into the sea, and then they would change into their bathing clothes. And so this wasn't a bikini. Obviously, the women had to especially cover up most of their bodies because of that time. People were not encouraged to show their bodies, their skin, etc., because of decorum, etc. So women especially would change in these, what they were called bathing machines. And this is an interesting concept, because eventually they would be changed into these little houses that you can now see in beaches and towns, etc., on the seaside in the UK. Have you seen these little colourful houses? These little colourful houses we call beach huts. Huts, H-U-T, beach huts. These beach huts are is the developed form of those bathing machines that were originally pushed into the ocean on wheels. Then they were eventually transformed into these fixed stationary beach huts. But these beach huts are not places for people to live in. These are places for people to get changed into their bathing clothes. Nowadays, they are quite expensive to buy and to rent, and people put their beach things inside these houses. So they will put maybe their surfboard or their deck chair or their maybe some kind of equipment that they use on the beach, and they will store it in there. They are exceptionally expensive in some places in the UK, but they were originally there to help people not to become, not to get changed, obviously, in public. And you will see the development between Victorian women wearing these very conservative clothing. They are covering up their skin, etc. The men at this time would either swim in a longer pair of trousers, or they would swim naked. So it was perfectly fine for a man to be naked on the beach in Victorian time, but obviously the women not. And it was very much separate. The women would swim separately from the men at that time too. But we need to remember that this was a time when people were encouraged to go in the ocean for health reasons. They were not swimming like we do nowadays for pleasure. So this was in the mid-1700s. They obviously created many things in these towns to be able to have infrastructure for these people who were visiting, these visitors. So you will start to see these fashionable ways of people visiting Brighton and Blackpool, etc. So if you look here, we have what we call a pier. Can you see on the screen it's written Brighton Pier? This pier is basically an extension of a promenade. The idea was that women and men, they would, in the Victorian period, they would promenade down this pier, and they would perhaps have fish and chips or have something to eat, and then they would sit and look out at the ocean and the sea, etc. And this was basically the creation of the kind of social side of having a visit to the seaside. I was trying to see if I have a picture of me here. Here I am sat on a deck chair on Brighton Pier when I did my exchange program in 2023. I took my students to Brighton and we sat there on the deck chairs in the sunshine. It was sunny that day, which is quite remarkable. And you can see here, this is what Victorians would have done. They would have sat on deck chairs in the sunshine on Brighton Pier. And so this was the start of the popularity of going to the seaside. And eventually, principally because of this, it started this kind of popularization of going to the seaside. Trains, the railway, would then develop and become a popular way of visiting the seaside. So if you go to London nowadays, you can get a train from London to the seaside. You can go to Brighton, you can go to Bournemouth, etc., which are nearer to London. And this invention of the railway helped people visit the seaside. And the other thing that would then encourage people to go to the seaside was the start of having a day off. So if you think about it, before people were working in factories, the working class population in the UK would not have had a holiday. They would obviously have had Sunday, they would go to church, etc., but they would not have had a holiday like we do. And it was in the 1900s that started to become popular for the factories to take their employees on holiday to a seaside destination. And so they would take their factory workers to Brighton, to Blackpool, etc. And this would start making the working class become accustomed to going to the seaside for their holiday. And this also opened up new opportunities for those towns and little villages and cities to expand. They started to build more popular, cheaper hotels and cafes, etc. And so now we see all of this expansion of the seaside towns in the UK because of the working class now also going on holiday. And so if we look here, we can see this is Blackpool in the Victorian periods. You can see here the expansion of the people starting to have the popularity of visiting Blackpool at that time. So Another famous part, before I move on, is the way people associate the beaches in the UK with this type of scene. How many of you have you been to the beach in the UK? Here we have a very traditional type of beach in the UK. The beach is very much a pebbly beach on the southern side of the UK. When you go to the UK, you can visit Brighton and you will sit on the stones on the beach, something that's very different for a Brazilian to see stones and pebbles on a beach. I grew up visiting the south coast, Brighton, etc. when I was a child because I lived near London, and we would go to the beach and see these pebbles, and we would put our towels on the pebbles and lie down. And obviously it's not as comfortable as lying down on a sandy beach, but that doesn't mean there aren't sandy beaches in the UK. I wanted to bring here some examples. For example, when I was a child, we would also go to this beach, which is in Devon, one of the best beaches in the UK. It's called Woolacombe Beach, and it's very, very sandy, and it's very popular for surfing. And you will see lots of people on the beach at this time of the year going to Woolacombe Beach in Devon. You will also see lots of people going to this beach in Cornwall. Look how beautiful this beach is. It's this is Durdle Door. Durdle Door. This is also a very popular beach. And you will also see, just one more example for you here, this type of beach where you will see cliffs, this kind of rocks coming down into the ocean is very, very, very popular along the coastline of the UK. Principally because of the geography of the UK. It includes lots of cliffs. You will see cliffs on the south coast, the southwest coast. In Wales also there are lots of really nice beaches. And so you will see this contrast between Brighton and towns that have lots of infrastructure, and then you will have these sandy beaches. You will also see, for example, look how beautiful this is. This is up in the north of England. This is called Bamburgh Castle. It's also a beach area, but with a castle on it. I mean, there are lots of, it's a very, very diverse landscape. This is Torquay in Devon too. Torquay has become very famous because of Agatha Christie, but she's also a very famous Victorian resort for people to have visited when they went on holiday. And so because of the working class, going on to holiday to the seaside became very popular, lots of infrastructure, hotels. It started to become very, very, very popular in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. People would take holiday and go on holiday to the beach. In 1938, the Holiday Act was passed, which meant that people started to have time off. As a part of the law in England, you could have time off work and people would go to the seaside. And so this was the boom. We say when something has become very popular, it's a boom. So this was the holiday boom in the seaside. Unfortunately, from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s until recently, people started to discover that they could go abroad. They could go to Spain and France and have better weather. And so nowadays, the seaside, the towns in the UK are not as popular as they were in the 1930s and 40s and 50s, because people will go to Europe to guarantee nice weather. Because unfortunately, one of the downsides of the weather in the UK means that we cannot go to the beach as much as we would like. We don't have a long summer with lots of sunshine and lots of many, many months of the year with the opportunity to go to the beach. I go to the beach with my family even in the winter. I remember when I was a child, we would go to the beach in the rain. We would go to the beach in the wind, in the cold, and we would wear hats and gloves and go to the beach. So going to the beach is something that the British have learnt to do even in winter. I went to the beach last weekend, and it's winter in Brazil at the moment, and the beach was empty. There were very, very few people at the beach. And I think, 22, 23 degrees is fine to go to the beach. But obviously for Brazilians, it's quite cold. And so it were very, very few people at the beach. Whilst when I go to the UK, even in Christmas time, when it's wet and windy and cold, people go to the beach. And so we've seen the different types of beaches in the UK. We've seen how the beach and the seaside became a popular destination. Now I want to compare the difference between a Brazilian beach and a British beach, because Brazilian beaches have always been quite popular for Brazilians because of the geographic, the way your towns and ports were structured. So we have Salvador, we have Rio de Janeiro, Santos, etc., which were very big ports. And these big cities already had this kind of attraction for people to go to the beach, because people grew up in these port towns. Whilst in the UK, these little towns and villages became bigger because of tourism. They weren't big before. They were small fishing towns, and they started to become big because of tourism. Whilst in Brazil, these cities were very big already, Fortaleza, etc. Exactly, Adriana. So when I go to a British beach, what do? When I go to a British beach, you have to take your chair, you have to take your food, you have to take your drinks, because it is very unusual that you will find at a British beach, in the more sandy beaches, you will not find people, even bars, selling things, because these places, you're not allowed to go on the beach and start selling food and drink. Whilst in Brazil, you will see people selling food and drink. And I took a few pictures whilst I was at the beach at the weekend. Let me find here a picture. So here we go. So here we have people selling clothes at the beach in Brazil. We also have people, I saved some other pictures. My son loves to have acai at the beach. Let me see here. Oh, it's out of focus. Here we go. So here we have the ice cream man selling ice cream at the beach here in Brazil. You will not have this in the UK. You will not have somebody walking along in front of you selling cheese, acai, ice cream, clothes, balls, everything. In Brazil, you can go shopping at the beach. And it's something that my dad, when he visited Brazil, found extraordinary, to see people selling lots of things on the beach here. I personally, Rachel, I prefer beaches that don't have lots of people selling things on the beach. When I go to the beach here at the coast of São Paulo, I normally try to find beaches that have less infrastructure, because I like the kind of quiet vibe, let's say. But my son is the opposite. He absolutely loves seeing the ice cream man, the acai man, the cheese man, the man selling the buckets, the man selling the balls. And so he loves all this kind of movement. So we have one day we go to a beach that has all that infrastructure. And then one day we go to a beach that I prefer, which is basically I take my water, I take my whatever I want to eat with me, and I have that with me to eat at the beach, because there won't be infrastructure. It's interesting, this difference. I think perhaps it's because I grew up on a beach where we already did that. We already had to take our sandwiches, our crisps, our drinks to the beach. What you will find in some beaches, principally in those beaches in the UK that were resorts in the Victorian time, you will see people, shops, not on the beach, but behind the road, behind the beach. You will see some shops selling, for example, an ice cream or fish and chips, but you will not find people selling anything on the beach in the UK. So it's something you won't see people serving you any ice cream or cheese or fish and chips or anything on the beach. You can go and get your fish and chips and then come and sit on the beach, which I did with my students. You can come and sit with your fish and chips on the beach and have those fish and chips, but it's not, you won't find somebody selling that to you on the beach. You have to get up, go off the beach, find the fish and chip shop, come back with your fish and chips, and then sit on the beach again. Whilst in Brazil, you will find that there are lots of bars that you have the table and chairs. You sit on the table and chairs, and the barman, the waiter comes and he gives you your fish for you to eat, and he serves you your beer or your coconut, etc. And it's interesting how Brazilians kind of have all that infrastructure. You will find that in places like Brighton, there will be bars that sell food, but they're not allowed to sell it on the beach. You can't sit on the beach with their food. You can sit in the bar, but you can't sit in the beach. And so it's interesting to have this difference between having this kind of waiter service in Brazil, and in the UK, you just have to take the things with you. I personally prefer to take things with me, but I do find it entertaining to see the difference. And my dad loved it. He bought 6 hammocks. Hammocks is rede in English. He bought 6 because the person who was selling the hammocks, my dad thought he was amazing. He couldn't understand a lot what he was saying. And my dad was like, oh, I'm going to take 6 of the hammocks for my children back in the UK because I have 8 brothers and sisters, and my dad bought 6 hammocks for my brothers and sisters and took them back to the UK in his suitcase. And I was like, Dad, you really don't need to buy 6. He's just being friendly. People will try and sell things. And my dad would sit there and the person would come past. And obviously my dad does look a little like a tourist, principally because he's wearing clothes on the beach, whilst Brazilians generally don't wear clothes on the beach. And then he would wear his t-shirt and things. So the person selling the thing would walk past and be like, oh, would you like some cheese? And my dad would be like, yeah, let's have some cheese. And then he'd pay for the cheese. Oh, would you like an ice cream? My dad was like, yeah, let's have ice creams. And he'd buy ice cream because he found it so entertaining to see people selling things to him on the beach. Obviously, I did encourage him to take it slow because otherwise he'd be buying everything on the beach. The one thing he didn't buy was the kind of braid in your hair or the tattoos, which you can get tattoos on the beach here in Brazil. Those henna tattoos, yeah. It's very, very funny to see this contrast between the British and Brazilian culture. I also put here that what women will wear on the beach in Brazil and what women will wear on the beach in the UK is a little different. You will see a lot of people in Brazil wearing very tiny bikinis. It's cultural, no judgment. You want to wear a tiny bikini, wear what you like. But in the UK, it's very rare that you will see women wearing very small bikinis. Most women will be wearing a bikini that's slightly more modest, let's say. But that's a cultural thing as well. Also, it's not as common for men to be wearing what you call sunga, which we call swimming trunks in English. Men normally wear shorts in the UK as well. And I actually saw a Brazilian who's an English teacher in America saying that he found this very different when he moved to America, how people used to laugh that he was wearing swimming trunks, sunga, and when they would be wearing shorts. So this is just something that's culturally different. But I definitely noticed how women wear much smaller bikinis here in Brazil than you would wear perhaps in the UK. But also women in the UK wear bikinis much less than a Brazilian woman because it's cold and probably quite rare that we will be getting our bikini out of our wardrobe to wear because of the weather, unfortunately. And as many people have mentioned, you will see lots of people walking their dogs on the beach in the UK. You will see lots of people walking even in cold, rainy weather in the UK. My mum does this. She lives near the seaside. She lives in Devon. and she goes to the beach frequently with her dog to walk him, even in the winter, even in the rain, and he loves it, obviously. And one other thing before I finish, I forgot to mention, is some forms of entertainment that you have at the UK, in UK beach places. So the resorts that were popular for Victorians continue to have forms of entertainment. And one of the forms of entertainment that my son especially enjoys is what we call an arcade. So this is an arcade. They're kind of like games and things that you play. You put some money in and you play the games. So these games, this arcade, became popular in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and it still is a popular place to visit when you are in a beach resort in the UK. And it's kind of an old style thing to do, but my son enjoys it, obviously. And you will see this, for example, in Brighton, you will see it in Blackpool, you will see it in some of the Victorian resorts like Torquay, Westward Ho in the UK, etc. Because it's a place for people to go and kind of play a game or something when it's raining, etc. So arcades is also something you will find. Actually, I noticed here in Brazil there are places that have now roller coasters and some rides and things that you can go on. In the UK, this became popular in the Victorian periods too. Tamir is asking if there are topless beaches. I don't know. I can't be certain. I don't think there are because of the legislation. But it's not something I would probably find that you would probably not find topless beaches because of the legislation of not being able to show these parts of your body in the UK. Somebody's saying that they finished in Margate. So Margate is also my mother used to go to Margate for her summer holidays with her family. It's also a Victorian beach town destination. So it's very interesting, I think, to have this contrast between the beaches in Brazil and beaches in the UK. People saying I used to buy rocks. Let me just show you this rock. This is not a rock as in a pedra, as a rock, as a sweet. You can find this in many shops on piers and also in Brighton and Blackpool and these places. You will find this sweet. It's a very traditional sweet. It will break all of your teeth. You will also find lots of people eating this at the beach in the UK. Candy floss, which you call sweet cotton. We call it candy floss in the UK. Candy floss, also very famous to eat at the beach. Not really, doesn't really go with the beach, I think, but it was something I used to eat when I was a child, and having an ice cream. I remember going to the seaside to have an ice cream a lot too. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about the differences between the British and Brazilian beaches. This type of class I love to give to help you learn more about the culture, get more vocabulary, and also to practice your listening skills, because listening is an important part of improving your conversation and communication skills in English. A lot of people worry about practicing their speaking skills, but forget that they need to practice their listening skills. In order to have a conversation, we need to be able to listen and speak. So please make sure that you do practice. Don't neglect your listening skills. Very important to practice them to improve your listening skills and vocabulary, your comprehension, and also your general knowledge of the UK. This happens every Friday. We do this until Christmas. We will be having classes every Friday. After Christmas, probably I will be moving on to a new project. So make the most of the rest of this year to practice with me on Fridays with lunchtime listening. Okay. So I also would just like to add here at the end of our class that I will be opening up spaces on my Make It British course. Make It British, my course for students who have above intermediate level. It's a course where you study pronunciation with my accent. modern received pronunciation. You will practice your listening skills and your conversation skills. There are conversation classes included in Make It British in this new group. So if you would like to study with me, you have lifetime access to Make It British, and you can sign up on Monday. Monday there will be new spaces and new class for Make It British. So if you would like to study with me and enjoy British culture, practice your listening skills, improve your pronunciation, have conversation classes with me, do come along to Make It British on Monday. Thank you very much, guys, for coming to class today. And I hope if you are in the UK, you will visit a beach, because apparently there is a heat wave coming this weekend. So enjoy the good weather, because the good weather will end soon in the UK. So you need to make the most of it now. And obviously in Brazil, we have most of the time good weather a whole year. Somewhere in Brazil is always hot. Yesterday I saw on the news that it's 39 degrees in the middle of Brazil. So look at the difference. Where I am, it's 15 degrees at the moment. It's incredible that you can be in a country that has somewhere that has 39 degrees and the other part has 15 degrees. But yeah, I would prefer a little bit hotter, but it's coming. Summer is coming to Brazil soon. Thank you very much, guys. I will see you all very soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.